Hi, my name's Dawn Lyle, and thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak to you today about entrepreneurship, and in particular what we mean when we talk about harmonious entrepreneurship. I'm really delighted to be here. These are topics that are really close to my heart, and looking forward to sharing a few ideas with you today. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a few slides, so bear with me just a moment. So, as I say, my name's Dawn Lyle, and I run an organisation called For the Region, and we're a community interest company based in Swansea, and we cover the whole of the region of South West Wales, which is Neath Talbot, Swansea, Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire, and we are a purpose-driven alliance of businesses and organisations and community groups from across South West Wales, and really we champion the region and we stand for businesses and organisations working together for the greater good of South West Wales. And our vision is a happier, healthier South West Wales with a thriving economy. And we're collaborating with partners on a huge range of different projects and initiatives to try and make that vision happen. So we're on a mission for the region. We stand for people being the change that they want to see in the world. And really, we believe that everybody has something important to contribute. So we create spaces for people to come together and talk about what they want for the future of South West Wales, and then emerge shared visions and shared projects in order to collaborate for a flourishing future. We have a number of partner organisations who support our work. We're an alliance of membership companies join us to support our mission and to support our work. And we're a really small team, but we're really passionate about what we do and really sort of passionate advocates for this fantastic region, which we think is the best place to live in the whole of the UK, and certainly one of the best places to start and grow a business. So I want to talk about a few concepts, first of all, that I think will come up as you're on your entrepreneurial journey, particularly to create businesses that are good for the planet and good for society. So this concept of business as a force for good is something that I talk about all the time. I think maybe in the kind of environmental movement or the social justice movement, all too often, businesses are regarded as part of the problem rather than part of the solution to the challenges that we're facing in our society and across our planet. And I think in many cases that clearly is reality. Businesses, and particularly those kind of major global corporations, have a lot to answer for, and the pursuit of profit is probably responsible for the kind of environmental degradation and the injustices that we're grappling with as a society. But I think there is an alternative, and we talk a lot about business as a force for good. I mean, For the Region is an alliance of businesses and organisations, but we feel like businesses can stand for something good. Businesses at the end of the day are run by people, and people care. People care about the environment, people care about each other, people care about the places that they come from and their local communities. And so this idea of being against business or being anti-business, I think, is a limiting worldview, and instead we need to be campaigning for business as a force for good. And so I suppose that's the theme that we're thinking about today, and one of the concepts that I wanted to explore a little bit. The next concept is this idea of being purpose-driven. So we often think about businesses as being driven by money, driven by profit. And I think that there's a more exciting, more fulfilling way of being a business, and that is to be purpose-driven. And I was asked recently whether I think businesses that are purpose-driven can also be profit-driven. And I think it's a choice as to what is your fundamental driving force. Obviously, people are in business to earn a living, and businesses need to be economically sustainable in order to survive. But actually, when we're pursuing money as an end in itself, and when our goals are purely financial, when times get tough and when circumstances become challenging and difficult, it's hard to find the energy to keep going. Whereas when you're purpose-driven in life and in business, you have that bigger why and that bigger reason to exist. And so we talk about ourselves For the Region as being purpose-driven. It's really obvious for us. We are for the region. And it's that bigger goal and that bigger ambition that drives everything we do. And of course, you can still make money, you can still make a profit, but it's what comes first. So purpose-driven, I think, is the future of business. And I heard a quote once that said, in future, people won't ask the question of why you got into business. They'll just understand that businesses are a force for good and that your purpose is your whole reason for being. And I think when you talk to younger business people, it's a given. It's a given. It's almost the first thing that people talk about when you ask them to introduce their companies. They talk about their purpose, why are they here? And you want that purpose to be something that is meaningful to you, and that problem in the world that you're seeking to solve, or that kind of guiding value and principle that you stand for. So those are the businesses that are really exciting to me. It's those businesses that are purpose-driven, that are on a mission to make things better. And I think that's one of the really important concepts when we think about business as a force for good and harmonious entrepreneurship. Another concept that I wanted to just unpack a little bit is something that we call the well-being economy. So you may have come across the idea of a well-being economy, and it's something that we advocate a lot for the region. So this is looking at our economic system and saying that economics should have a greater purpose, there's that word again, a greater purpose than purely economic growth. So we want to see an economy that serves the well-being of people and the planet. And that idea is referred to across the world these days as the well-being economy. And Wales is part of something called the Wellbeing Economy Governmental Organisation. And we have an alliance here in Wales called the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which I'm actively involved with. And what we're trying to do at the Wellbeing Economy Alliance is to make alternative ways of organising our society, of organising our businesses, more visible and more accessible to people. We live in a society that is driven by profit, and we live in economies that seem to pursue kind of economic growth at any cost. And Kate Raworth, who's the author of a really amazing book called Donut Economics, says that actually 21st century economists need a different paradigm. They need a different way of thinking about economics that is not purely driven and focused on economic growth at any cost. And instead, we need to be agnostic about growth. So whereas in the past, we might have thought, an economy needs to grow, whatever the cost to the planet, whatever the cost to society, growth is the primary goal. Actually, in the 21st century, we need to think about an economy needs to provide well-being for people and places and for the planet, whether or not it grows. So that kind of paradigm shift, I think, is really, really important. And a well-being economy and well-being economics is a useful turn of phrase to use when you're talking about what your business is for and what you're trying to help build as a purpose-driven business, as a business that's the force for good in the world. You're seeking to be part of a new kind of economy, and that's an economy that serves all of our well-being. So look that up. It's really interesting. A whole world of information about a different form of organisation for society and for our economy. Another kind of economy that you've probably come across and that we talk about a lot For the Region is the circular economy. So, you'll have come across the idea of the circular economy, probably, if you're interested in anything to do with sustainable business models. So our traditional economy is what's referred to as a linear economy, where we take natural resources out of the earth or out of our planet. We turn those into products, we make things out of them, and we use them, and then we throw them away. So that's a linear journey of natural resources becoming landfill, becoming waste, just that sort of profligate use of natural resources. Whereas the circular economy is one that seeks to reuse and redesign and re-engineer and recycle and reprocess natural resources. So it's an economy that is much more mindful of the finite resources that our planet can provide, and that seeks to make much better use of those precious natural resources. So when you're thinking about new business ideas and sustainable business concepts, the circular economy is a really useful mental model to think about how your business and your products can recycle and reuse and turn waste materials or waste streams into value, and how you can be part of the solution rather than part of the problem in terms of how we use and reuse natural resources on our planet. I want to talk about another concept now, which is really close to my heart again, and something that we're really passionate about for the region, and it's in our name in a way. But that is place-based businesses. So what we stand for the region is this idea that local businesses and people living across South West Wales should be much more invested in helping to promote the well-being of South West Wales. And it's kind of a move away from the kind of globalized economy that we live in to say that actually it is important where a business is located, and that the businesses that are based in a local place tend to be much better for people and ultimately for the environment than kind of global corporations that have no place. So obviously over the last few decades, there's just been this massive growth of global companies and a move away from the idea of local. And it's sort of really important, I think, if we're looking at more sustainable business models and a greener economy going forward, that we reconnect with this idea of being place-based and being rooted in the local places that we come from. So I always get really excited when I hear about businesses that honour their local communities and that are proud, and they're proud ambassadors and proud champions of where they are based, and that they give back and that they reinvest in their local communities. And it also relates to that idea of shortening our supply chains and buying local and spending our money within our local economies. And there's been a huge amount of research done that shows that when we spend money with local businesses and local shops, that money that we spend in those local companies just gets recirculated in our local economies over and over again, and it's called the multiplier effect. Whereas if you spend your money in a global corporation or a big multinational, if you spend your money in one of the major supermarkets, for example, a small proportion of that money stays in the pockets of somebody local. Perhaps there are a few locally employed people working in that supermarket, although many more of them are being replaced by, machines, by digital checkout machines. But most of the money that you spend in that big supermarket just leaves the local economy very, very quickly and ends up in the pockets of shareholders and in tax havens around the world. Whereas spending the money with a local business, they're probably employing more local people. They're giving back to the community because they're based there. They care about the local area. And hopefully they're buying from local businesses themselves. And that money is just adding more value and creating more wealth within local communities, which we really need here in Wales. And it would solve so many of our economic problems if we could just keep more wealth in our local economies across Wales and everywhere else in the world. So being a place-based business, I think, is really important. And another concept I came across, which is really related to this, is the idea of attachment economics, which again says that it is important where a business is based, and that those businesses that are attached to a local place tend to be a much greater force for good in that place than those companies that are aiming for a global market and world domination. And I think there's a real appetite for locally based businesses that are proud of where they are and champions of their local places. So I'd encourage you to think about the importance of being place-based in your entrepreneurial journey. Social value is a real buzzword at the moment for anyone that's in this space. Now, social value refers to the greater value that businesses can create beyond their purely economic and financial value. So it's to thinking about the kind of environmental value that businesses can deliver, but also the social and, the public ethical value that they can create within communities. So it's just a really important metric that relates to everything I've been saying, that when you talk about the value of your business and the value that your business is seeking to create, it can't just be a conversation about financial and economic value anymore. It's got to be about the wider benefits of the business that you're creating. And so we call that social value. And particularly if you're aiming to sell your products and services into kind of local authorities, trying to sell to big organizations, those organizations have set themselves targets for making sure they are delivering social value with the public pound. And so those businesses and organizations that are able to really clearly articulate what is that greater social value that they're delivering are, made much more interesting and more appealing because of that. So it's just another way of talking about value, thinking about value, and there are lots of different ways of measuring your social value. But as I say, it's not just about social value, it also incorporates that kind of environmental value as well. It's a catch-all term for those other sorts of wealth and value that are beyond purely economic and financial. So now I want to just introduce to you a few of our member businesses and other of my sort of favourite companies from across our region that I think really exemplify some of these values and ideas that I've been talking about so far. I want to talk about Smile Plastics, which you might have come across. Now, Smile Plastics is a company that's based on the Gower in Swansea, and they turn plastics into new products. So they collect old plastic, they recycle it and turn it into an amazing new material that can be used for all sorts of new products, particularly kind of kitchen worktops and really like amazing plastic surfaces. And you can see in this photograph, they work with retail and all sorts of other kind of customers to provide these kind of really unique materials. And what I love about this business is that they really want to tell the story of the material that they're using. So when you look at these surfaces that they create, you can see kind of flecks of the original material in that product. So whether it's like little bits of foil and colour from a yogurt pot, or old bits of text or barcodes from the original product, or little bits of the kind of plastic labelling on the packaging, the original packaging, those kind of little bits of the story are embedded within the new material, just to make sure people are aware of the story of that material and where it's come from. So this is a really purpose-driven company. They really are out there to try and address the problems with plastic in the ocean and plastic in the environment, and to recycle plastic into something valuable and beautiful. And they're a really high-end product. Smile Plastics deliver a really sort of expensive top-end kind of designer material. And it's just a really beautiful example of a local business that's doing amazing things and really part of the circular economy that I was talking about. Another company I really want to mention is Coal Town Coffee Roasters. Now, these are just up the road from us. They're in Ammanford. Now, for those of you that don't know Ammanford, it's a former coal mining town. And with the decline of coal mining, the local town economy really has suffered, and that's the same for many communities across Wales and elsewhere in the world in the kind of post-industrial era, when so many jobs used to be dependent on heavy industries like coal mining. With the decline of those industries, there's increased kind of joblessness and just a cycle of increasing poverty and depression in these towns where there's seen to be a lack of opportunity for local people and a lack of jobs. Now, Coal Town Coffee Roasters was started by a couple of people who live in Ammanford. That's their local hometown, and they're passionate about coffee. So obviously they don't grow the coffee in Ammanford. I don't think we've quite got the climate for it. So they get their coffee in a fair trade way from elsewhere in the world, but they bring it to Ammanford, and they've created a roastery, a coffee roastery in Ammanford. And when you ask them about their business, almost the first thing they'll say is their purpose. And they talk about coffee being the new kind of black gold for Ammanford. So I think coal used to be referred to as black gold in these kind of valleys towns, in these mining towns and communities. And so their mission with Coal Town Coffee is for coffee to be the new black gold and to create a new industry for Ammanford, a new source of jobs and opportunity for local people. So it's a really purpose-driven company. They're a certified B Corp, so you've probably come across the idea of B corporations. It stands for Benefit Corporation, and it's a global movement of companies that have gone through a really rigorous process to demonstrate their social value and their values and principles for being an ethical and sustainable business. And if you're a certified B Corp, then you're really you've really adhered to some stringent criteria, and you can hold your head up high. It's a really great certification to get. And as a new business, as a startup business, it's much easier than when you're a large organization that's been in business for a long time and trying to meet the standards of being a B Corp. So it's certainly something to look into, and there's a growing number of B Corps. I'll come on to another one shortly, but it's a real badge of honor, a bit like being a fair trade business, but it just applies to every aspect of your company, from your governance and how you employ people and whether you're good for the planet and everything else. So Coal Town Coffee Roasters, they're not only a fair trade company, but they're also a B Corp. And when I was talking about being place-based, that is what this company is all about. It's all about being a force for good in their local town in Carmarthenshire. And I really, I love their coffee and really recommend you check them out for a great example of a purpose-driven company. Farmco Market is another of my favourite local businesses. So these guys source locally produced food from across Swansea and the surrounding area, and you can arrange for a collection or you can have it delivered to you every week. But this is a company that's really trying to tackle the huge problems that exist in our globalized food supply chains and to enable people to access kind of really healthy, lovely, well-produced local food. And they talk about kind of regenerative agriculture and food that is kind of produced in a way that is environmentally sustainable and good for the planet. And back to that point about buying local, the people who produce this food are other local businesses that are driven by the need for much more sustainable methods of food production. So it's not cheap food and it's not fast food, but it's the healthiest, most high quality, locally produced, locally grown food that you can get. And so, organic fruits and vegetables and anything they can't get locally, so more exotic fruits and vegetables, it's all sourced from as locally as possible and grown organically. So a business that really stands for something, that's trying to be the change that it wants to see in the food system, that's trying to educate its customers about the importance of thinking about how your food is produced, where it's grown, where it comes from, and trying to make that food available to more and more people in a convenient way. So check out Farmco, really great example of a business that's part of a movement and really standing up for its values. And of course, more people are more and more aware these days of where their food comes from. And so it's a huge opportunity area for entrepreneurs to develop lovely food products and produce in sustainable, regenerative ways. And I think there is a growing demand for that sort of produce. A totally different sort of business, but another certified B Corp. Our friends at Urban Foundry, which is a consultancy, a regeneration consultancy based in Swansea. Now you can see some of the badges that this company have, accrediting the fact that they are a business that is a force for good and they really care about being a force for good. And one of those things is that they're a living wage employer. So being a living wage employer means that you pay above the kind of minimum wage. The real living wage is a salary that's been calculated by the Living Wage Foundation to represent the minimum that people need to live a decent standard of life. Because as we know, for many people, the greatest number of people living in poverty in this country tend to be those people who are working at ridiculously sort of low salary levels. And there's a big argument that says that the kind of minimum wage in this country just isn't enough to live on. It's not it doesn't give people dignity in their work. So the kind of working poor is a huge issue. So those businesses that are seeking to be a force for good and seeking to stand for the well-being of people and communities and society, not only being a B Corp, but being a living wage employer is another way of demonstrating that commitment. So Urban Foundry really care about successful local places. So regeneration is all about redeveloping local places so that they can thrive. And so, they work with local authorities and housing associations and government to advise them on economic development and regeneration across our region and beyond. But they have a really kind of value-led approach, and they really understand what makes thriving local places. So they're a great business that is absolutely committed to being a force for good, for being a business that's driven by that sense of purpose. And they're a consultancy business, a service-based business, so quite different, but really standing up for their values, and another great example. This is a brand new startup that I thought I would share with you, Molecule. So here is another business that stands for the circular economy, this time in relation to food. Now, food waste is a huge problem. So much edible, perfectly good food goes to waste for a number of different reasons in our society. And that's a big contributor to climate change, but it's also it's just such a crazy irony, isn't it, when so many people are living in food poverty, relying on food banks, and then if you think about around the world, people suffering, struggling with starvation around the world, and yet mountains of perfectly good food goes to waste every day, every week, every year, not just because food goes to waste at source on farms. It goes to waste in restaurants and in retail. And also, I think one of the biggest parts of it is that it goes to waste in our own fridges and cupboards. We buy more than we eat. We throw away a huge amount of food. So this is a massive problem, and the founders of Molecule are setting out to try and solve this huge problem. So very much purpose driven, and they've come up with an innovation that is a really kind of new use of the technology to freeze dry food in a way that captures the maximum nutritional benefit and the maximum kind of quality of the food. But it means that they can capture food before it goes to waste and turn fresh food into food that keeps, that has a longer shelf life, but that maintains as much as possible the kind of nutritional value of that fresh food. And they're seeking to work with producers across the region and beyond to capture surplus food and turn it into food that keeps. And then they want to supply that product into particular markets where healthy food is really important. And one of those, for example, is the health board into hospitals. If you've ever noticed how unhealthy a lot of the food options are in hospital, perhaps next time you're visiting a hospital or in that sort of place, you can look around you and see, but they'll have vending machines selling the unhealthiest food and cafeterias selling unhealthy food. And it's as if people haven't made the connection between the food we eat and our health. And obviously there's a huge connection between those two things. So Molecule is one to watch. It's a brand new startup business based in our region. Really proud to be kind of made in Wales. And again, really addressing a sustainability challenge, bringing technology and innovation to solve a problem that's a problem and an opportunity for the environment, for people's health, and addressing food poverty as well. Another business that I really love that you may have come across, they're based in Sketty in Swansea. They're called Balanced Responsible Living, and they are a reuse shop. So they don't say plastic free because there's still some plastic involved, but they are a business that has been set up to tackle the problem of plastic pollution in the environment by creating a kind of refill shop. So they've got a beautiful shop in Sketty where you can go and refill your own containers with all sorts of food products and reducing plastic waste. And Russell, who's the founder of Balance, has created a really powerful video talking about why he has set up this company and how moved he was to understand the extent of the problem of plastic in the oceans, and that he's really set out to kind of be the change that he wants to be in the world and to enable other people who care about this issue to be responsible consumers and to buy food products that aren't wrapped in plastic. So again, it's a purpose-driven business. There's a growing demand for people that are trying to live a more plastic-free lifestyle, and Balanced Responsible Living has been established to meet that need. And it's gained a lot of press coverage, and there's a huge opportunity there. But when you talk to Russell that he is, he's driven by that greater sense of purpose, and he's on a mission to try and amplify the issue, to educate people, and to make the solution available. We can complain all we like about food wrapped in plastic, but when we go to our supermarkets, we're still faced with massively excessive amounts of plastic packaging. So he's giving us another option, and it's those kind of change makers, those people who are driven by their values and what's really important, that can make those options available to more and more people. So another great business that's really important to support. So that's just a little flavour of some of the businesses that are up and running in our region of South West Wales. And as I say, we're an alliance of really, businesses that care about the future, care about the places that they're from, care about the people and communities of South West Wales. And as a purpose-driven alliance, we think that if we can come together as a business community, we can really make change happen. Changing the paradigm. So not letting businesses off the hook, standing for those businesses that are a force for good and that want to be the change that we need to see in the world. So I'm, passionate about entrepreneurship. I started a business myself at the age of 23, a computer graphics company. And I think entrepreneurship is sort of the most exciting journey you can go on in your life. For me, it's been incredibly rewarding being an employer, being an investor in people, trying to create purposeful and fulfilling jobs and careers for people, and to be a business that's based in Swansea, trying to contribute to the local economy, trying to stand up for a place that needs more of us to start and grow our businesses here, to create that thriving economy for future generations. So I'm passionate about business startups, passionate about entrepreneurship, but I want to see those businesses that are purpose-driven, that are place-based, that want to be a force for good, that are part of the circular economy, building a well-being economy, and all those kind of really important concepts around delivering social value, both environmental and societal value beyond the purely financial and economic metrics. And we're a growing alliance. And if you do start a business, then I'd encourage you to join us. We've got a startup club where we're trying to connect entrepreneurs across the region and create a community where you can work together, support each other, and connect with those really good businesses from across our region. But I come back to a point that I made quite near the beginning, which is that businesses are run by people at the end of the day, and businesses therefore should reflect the values of the people that run them. And it's certainly been true in my life that when you follow your own sense of purpose, when you feel like you're on a mission, and when your business is driven by that greater sense of value and purpose, that is the most rewarding and fulfilling journey that you can take. So huge encouragement to anyone that is thinking about starting a harmonious business, pulling together all those different ways of being a force for good in the world and marrying those up with the opportunity to run a successful company, hopefully in your local community, making a difference to the place where you are and putting those values front and center of everything you do. Huge encouragement to you from me, and thank you again for the invitation to come and talk to you. Please do reach out to me. You can find me on our website fortheregion.org.uk. I'd love to hear about business startups in our city, in our region, and I'll help in any way I can to connect you with others across our region that care about the same things and want to be a force for good. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Bye for now.